everyone, welcome to the fresh video cast of My Emotions Matter, and today we'll be talking about how do you make working from home productive. So because of the recent onset of coronavirus, a lot of us have started working from home, and the trend of working remotely from home has increased in almost all the corporate offices that we see around us. While we do that, it's also very important that we are equally productive while working from home. Working from home is usually seen as something which is a boon for the workers, for the people working, because it allows a lot of flexibility. You can sleep in your own time, you can wake up in your own time, you can do things according to your body cycle. But what many of us might fail to understand is that working from home has its own sets of cons as well, and it can lead to its own sort of challenges. So today we are going to discuss exactly about that, and today we'll talk about how can working from home be made more productive. And for this conversation we have our very special member AJD, Aprajita Jha, and she's the linchpin of our office. So hi Aprajita Jha.
Hi everyone.
So when working from home, it is very, very crucial for you to set boundaries with your loved ones and your family members, and also boundaries with yourself. How do you think can people set these boundaries on place?
I think first of all, like a lot of people could find this working from home really strange at this point, given that a lot of people are still not aware about this sort of a setup when working. A lot of us are still like dealing with a lot of organizational changes. Like there was a lot of I mean, there used to be like different hierarchical like organizations like in the past, and now there are like times when like people are working in horizontal teams, and there's still a lot of getting used to when it comes to working from home, although people in the West have been trying to like getting this as a convenient option for people working. But I think in case of our country, a lot of people are still not used to this, because first of all, it's kind of socially isolating, which a lot of people are having to go through right now. And second, like a lot of people don't know how to get this mechanism going, because you still need people, and you still need like supervision for you to like getting your work done. So I think one way in which like this can be really like done properly is because like when we come out of our homes and we come to office, we have a like kind of a routine throughout the day. So whether it be like 10 to 5 or like 9 to 6 or whatever may be the time, like people have a like proper schedule when it comes to working in the offices, in the physical spaces. So I think even when like working from home, there should be a sort of a routine that people can follow through, so that there's no like distraction. I'm sure there'll be distractions, because it's not going to be the same, like it will not feel like the same space when you're working from home. But if you have a schedule, then like maybe it's easier for you to actually discipline yourself. And likewise, I think because you said it's also important, it's also important like that you let people like with whom you stay, whether it be your roommates or your family, know that you have a certain working hour. So I think it's important that at such time people practice saying no, because when it comes to like being in the home environment, like when there's a certain group activity, we can't like like refrain ourselves from it. We usually like somebody like initiates something and we like, okay, let's do this, and then everybody like there's this involuntary sort of participation like we go through. But I think in this time we really have to like practice saying no, and actually sort out what priorities like we have to focus on before like trying to also letting those distractions like come in, and like also like paying attention to whatever our family members want. So I think communicating expectations is also very important. Practicing like saying no is also important, and then at the same time we need to have a sort of routine which we can follow through that can help us regularize ourselves better. What do you have to like add in this?
No, I think what you said is really, really important. Three key takeaways for me from this answer is that it's very important that you set a routine for yourself. You find a framework, you plan your things out, because when you plan things out, then it becomes easier for you to execute. And you have to learn, like maybe this working from home is also a platform for people to learn the ability to say no. Because as we had already discussed in our earlier podcast as well, it's very important to say no during certain times. And similar comes when working from home, like when setting boundaries with your family or your loved ones, you need to be able to say no. And then at that point of time, by saying no, you're also disciplining yourself and refraining yourself, because you know that you gotta do what you got to do. So likewise, when working from home, sometimes you could lose that timetable at all, like because you're in your home environment and you have this like zero commute time, you could go on working for hours and hours and hours, extending your normal regular routine, and this could actually take a toll on your physical and mental and emotional well-being. So how do you make sure that you're balancing it well together?
I think this is again connected to what we were discussing earlier. Once you sort of have a routine, or let's say a schedule for yourself, where you decide like when is exactly when you want to work and focus on whatever you have to get done, and when is it when you want to like do things for yourself, like so there should be definitive breaks, I suppose. Like just because you're working from home does not mean like working from home all the time. There has to be a certain time period for the works to be done, and there has to be a certain time period for you to like do things that makes you feel like better, or let's say like that you're simply interested in. For me, it would be like whenever I go to home after like wrapping up my work, I'm usually like listening to some podcasts, and I'm like playing music, or I'm like trying to connect to and get in touch with some of my friends. So those sort of activities are also very important, especially at this time when like there's so much of panic going on regarding the pandemic, and there's so much of like chaos already about this working from home. And when people don't know exactly how to put this in place, there's also like equal importance of you to like giving time to yourself for your own well-being, and that to maintain that sanity. So I think it's important that people have definitive breaks. Just because you're working from home doesn't mean like you should let go of everything that you used to do for yourself. So there has to be definitive breaks. So like maybe it can be like it can be made flexible according to like how we wish to take it, because just because like on other like normal work days we used to have a certain chunk of like work time, for example, let's say like 9 to 6, doesn't mean that at home also you have to replicate the same thing. Maybe because like you're already so like socially isolated at that point of time, maybe you can like take breaks for yourself, for doing things that can actually like help you like rewind and like get back to like doing your things productively. So I think like taking definitive breaks in between the schedule and having a schedule in the first place is very important to like deal with whatever you said.
So yeah, as AJD stated, like it's very, very important for us to be able to distinguish. And while making a routine, we do not say that make your routine filled with work all the time. Maybe you can also fill your routine with some like with some tasks that you do purely out of self-love, purely for your own happiness. It's very important that your routine also consists of such things, and you can take definitive breaks. You can like incorporate such activities in your routine in a way that suits you. But again, as they say, only work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's very important to make sure that you're taking time out for yourself while you're also working, because otherwise the whole process of working can become very monotonous, and that will again lead you to become inefficient. When you're working from home, you're basically in your comfort zone. You might see your bed there, and then you might have the feeling that, oh, I want to go and sleep, or you might just end up being lazy while waking up. So how do you make sure that you get out of your comfort zone, even though you are in a comfortable place to be? How do you make sure that you do get out of comfort zone and you do wake up with that intensity to work efficiently even when you're working from home? What are some suggestions that you have?
I think even before this, pandemic, outbreak news came out, and there was even before this, I've been following certain podcasts where there like new work cultures are like get discussed. So, in some of the discussions, I came across this very thing, like people are likely to be very loose and flexible when they're in their own home environment, and they might not really feel like working some days because they just see that homely environment, and you kind of feel like losing like down and not doing like whatever. And this is not something that is unnatural. It's completely natural to feel so when you see such a homely environment. But I think one way to really tackle that problem can be like creating a space where you actually work. Like maybe हामीलाई अल्छी लाग्छ होला to see our घरको environment and wanting to just take a nap briefly, or to talk to one of our family members just because we see them in the vicinity. But maybe setting like a boundary for ourselves by creating a space where we can actually work and not do anything else in that area. And maybe we can eliminate all sorts of distractions in there. Maybe we could put our phones slightly away from that place, or maybe we could eliminate little comfortable distractions. Maybe there could be less of maybe there could be less like cushions, or the bed area could be a little away from that working space. So maybe having such a space where we can actually work, maybe a study room could be a feasible place and a suitable place where we could work. And then once we're done, maybe leaving that place and then going to another room to do activities for ourselves could be a good idea to separate that personal space and professional space even when working from home.
That's again a very, very important key takeaway for me, and I think it should be for our audience as well.
Yeah, although I think I'm yet to explore myself, because we still haven't explored that thing for ourselves. So maybe, but yeah, this is something I would like to try.
So maybe, yeah, we can all try, creating that space in our homes where we work, and where the things that would provide us comfort, or the things that would promote the lousiness within us are in a distant, like maybe we could create a separate study room, or maybe we would create a separate area where we just work, and that area, and looking at that area should ignite the feelings of okay, now I need to work within us. I think doing that can help us get away from our comfort zone, even though while we'll be at our homes. Having said that, while working from home, you can feel disconnected in your team itself. Like you might have that feeling of isolation, and you might feel certain sort of disconnection even within your team members, and efforts need to be put so that team members feel connected to each other. So what are some tips, or what are some suggestions that you have so that team members can feel connected to each other during this time of a pandemic where they should be connected to each other?
I think, like you said, it's very important. Just because it's working from home, it doesn't have to be completely isolated. So I think it's important that at this time, as teams, people check in with each other. And I think a very good platform for that could be video conferencing. Through video calls, people can check in with each other during a particular time of the day, or maybe alternate days, however the system works for them. And I think it's important that they let each other know what's going, so that even team members are accountable towards each other. Otherwise we don't really know what's going on. And sometimes even when let's say if I need help from you in doing a certain thing, I might not be very free in approaching you, or I might feel reluctant because I might think that since you're working in your own space, you might need that time and space for yourself to figure things out. So I think that sort of a help and accountability system should be created. And I know we still we're yet to explore this for ourselves, because we haven't completely gone into that quarantining phase yet. But I think doing check-ins regularly is very important, so that we're in touch with each other and we know exactly what's going on. And at this time, it shouldn't just be about work, check-ins itself. Maybe at such a vulnerable time when people are already going through so much of panic and distress, maybe there should also be space for reflections. through digital platforms where team members can actually share like each other's anxieties and what bothers them, so that they can address such issues like together, rather than keeping it with yourself and like not sharing it with team members. So maybe like creating such a platform like through digital platforms, or doing creating reflective spaces where people can actually share what's bothering them at such times can be helpful, rather than just doing just work meetings and work check-ins. So maybe, yeah, I think these are some ways that we can use to deal with such issues.
So a very important key takeaway that we take from this is that it's very important, maybe we can use the online avenues that we have, like given that the technology has given a very great gift to us of the internet, maybe we should use all the online, maybe we should use like the online platforms that we have, so that we get into video conferences, so that we can have check-in meetings, so that we can report to our supervisors, because it's very important to have that accountability at this point of time. Because what happens when you're working from home is that you might say that you will do certain works, but then you might end up not doing it at all. So it's very important to get in touch with your team members and then be accountable for what you were supposed to do and make sure that you have done it. Having said that, apart from having meetings related to work, it is also equally important to have reflection meetings within your team. It's because this is a time of vulnerability, and people, it's very important that team members understand each other's emotions and support them during this time of vulnerability, because this can actually help the team bond become very stronger. AG, the last question for today is that while at this period of pandemic, we are getting a lot of news and updates like every minute, whether it be from news sources, whether it be from TV channels, whether it be from our social media sites, we're getting a lot of updates, and sometimes those updates could leave us feeling very scared, very anxious. It could leave us in a mode of panic. And once we are in that mode, it might be very difficult for us to again transition into the work mode. So how do you think people manage these difficult emotions well, so that they can again go and work? Because ultimately you are accountable for a certain level of work when you're working from home. At the same time, is to pandemic or so how can people make the transition?
I think, that can be especially difficult when you're working from home, because you don't even have people around you to share that a lot. And even if you might have family members, they might be like going on about their own work. So it can be certainly like distressing in such a situation. But I think, as we were discussing earlier in our conversation, I think this is a good time for people to reflect on whatever is not going well, because it's not just happening with us, it's happening with a lot of people around the world. And I think this is also a time for solidarity. And it's also a time for people to reflect on such emotions. Even if we're not feeling okay, maybe we can find certain like mediums through which we can reflect on such emotions and find an outlet for the same. Like you were like speaking earlier in the conversation that we had, like maybe journaling could be one method through which people can actually express such distressing emotions. It's okay to feel it, because the time is such that people are likely to go through such distress and maybe trauma and maybe similar emotions that are not very that are not very likely to generate productivity in people. Like it's likely to make them sad and make them feel low. But if we find an outlet to actually express those emotions, if we find an outlet to reflect upon those emotions, I think it can be I think we can deal with it. There are certainly ways to deal with it. We just have to find what works for us. Journaling has certainly helped me through a lot of distressing moments in my own journey. So even when I was on a 3-month bed rest back in 2018, I think journaling really helped me. And talking to my friends digitally who were not even here in Kathmandu, it really helped me get through with my angst, because it was a very difficult period for me. And for people there's more or less a same distress that they're facing right now, because it's not a choice to be staying at home all the time, but they have to do it for their own well-being and for the well-being of people around. So I think in such a time it makes it is a good time for people to reflect on the distressing emotions and just try to let it out in some way possible. And I think it's also good if we know which news sources to follow and which not, because with like social media overwhelm, there's there's news from different kind of sources, some of which, and I would say most of which, are not even reliable. There's like, especially on like Facebook, Twitter and mediums like these, like there's lots of rumors that also go about. So it's important that we, like, especially when a pandemic as such has happened, it's important that we trust the reliable sources such as World Health Organization, BBC, maybe the reliable news sources that can actually tell us what's happening and not. It's important to be updated, but then at the same time, we shouldn't like panic, because this is certainly like not something that we alone are going through. All of us are going through this, and we're in this together, like we were discussing. So maybe being okay with things being not okay, like accepting that, and then again moving forward with a sense of gratitude, because at least even if we're working from home, we're still like protecting ourselves, we're still okay, and we're away from the pandemic. So certainly like we can like redirect that feeling of like distress towards actually being grateful that we're actually getting time to spend with our families and we're safe after all. So I think being grateful can also help us deal with those distressing emotions and actually help us get back on track. So I think, yeah, that could be also one way.
So one wonderful key learning from this is that maybe it's okay for us to not be okay. Like as Ajiti stated, that at this point of time, because a pandemic has hit our world, our mother earth, at this point of time, we need to be okay with feeling certain emotions, and maybe we can find an outlet for us to deal with such emotions. One way could be journaling, the other could be maybe talking to your friends, or maybe making voice recordings of how you're feeling at that point of time. So when you find an outlet for your difficult emotions, you can manage them well, and then maybe you can get back on track. And it's absolutely okay to feel scared, anxious at this point of time. So acceptance of these difficult emotions and finding a way to deal with them, to manage them, is the best way to make these emotions productive and get back to your work. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation, Ajiti. And with this, we'd like to say that if you have any questions, any kind of queries regarding the services we provide, or if you have anything to share with us because of this situation of pandemic, please feel free to reach out to us on our email address or on our social media page. Until then, bye-bye everyone, and please stay safe, stay protected, and please take your precautions. Everyone, bye!
Bye!